Astrology channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights. And I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do personal consultations on a wide variety of topics pertaining to both astrology and tarot. You can email me at the email that I will leave in the video description. Thank you. And also, if you're interested in tarot, you might also want to check out my tarot channel. I'm also going to be linking that in the video description and in the pinned comment. Okay, thank you. So first of all, a short introduction because yes, I know I haven't posted anything in a long time, close to 2 months if I am correct. And as I have also written in the community tab, I was sick for a while. I was on holiday and then I got sick, and it took me like, I don't know, something like 2-3 weeks to convalesce, to recover after that really bad bacterial infection or whatever it was. Those of you who maybe also are subscribed to my tarot channel, you probably have noticed that I have posted 2 videos on the tarot channel since I made that community post that I was recovering. But the first one, after I recorded the first one, like I think about a month ago, I completely lost my voice again. I kept coughing. I mean, not completely, but my voice was breaking down and I was coughing and I was still congested. So I was like, okay, clearly I shouldn't have recorded this. I think my voice is almost completely back to normal, but oh my god, it did take me a long time to recover. And yeah, I don't even want to imagine what, you know, the plague would be like. So far, I have been spared, and I hope not to experience it because I have heard from people who have gotten it and have gotten it really bad. Like to the point where it took months for them to recover, and they were not even fully recovered after months. So, I mean, this was just like a regular island flu or whatever, like a bacterial something. I took antibiotics, but it still really knocked me down on my butt because I felt like crap for weeks. But aside from that, also, the reason I really wanted to explain why I kind of took a break is just because I felt the need to take a break, to be honest. Aside from the fact that I was sick and I also had a lot of things that I had to prioritize in my everyday existence, like my job and stuff, things that I still have to prioritize. You know, a lot of things that are keeping me away from my astrological hobby. But aside from that, I just got to a point where I realized that I was starting to get stressed, and it started to feel like a pressure, this thing about like, oh, I should be recording a video, I should be like, I haven't recorded anything in a long time, and you know, and I still have to do all these things because yes, I am still aware that I have started several series that, you know, and plus several videos that I said that I would make that were requested. So yes, I still have those in mind, but I really felt like I should be taking a break because I didn't like where my thought processes were going with respect to this channel. Like, I didn't want to feel like it's a chore instead of a hobby as it started out for me, and it still largely is. I mean, it would be a stretch to call it a side hustle. And it's basically something I want to do for fun, and I want to do, you know, I want to record videos when I'm really in the mood, when I really want to feel like I, you know, have something to say, to share that is valuable, and I don't want to, you know, I just don't want to make it into another job, something that I have to do because I'm stressed out about it. So, yeah, I just wanted to give this as a short introduction for those of you who were interested in hearing my perspective. You know, so yeah, I do apologize if you have been waiting for some of those videos for a long time. I will get to them as soon as I can, but I also wanted to basically explain why I took a hiatus. That being said, the topic that I want to talk about today, again, is another topic because although I did take a hiatus, technically I still think about astrology on a daily basis. In fact, if I were to be honest, I probably think about it on an hourly basis. Astrology is my life. But the reality of the situation is, yeah, I tried to stay away, tried to separate myself from astrology, but it hasn't worked out. And yeah, so the topic I wanted to talk about is something that really kind of, well, again, I have been thinking about, or I have thought about several times until now, but I keep coming across things that remind me of this topic. And recently, actually, I saw this video on YouTube by another astrologer where he was talking about, okay, I'm going to say it was Kapil Raj. And he was, I don't remember what the topic was. And he said something along the lines of Venus debilitated in a woman's chart versus Venus exalted in a woman's chart. And oh right, I think the topic was about Venus in Revati or Venus in Pisces. And he said something along the lines of like, if a woman has Venus in Scorpio, in Vishaka, in Swati, nakshatras, that she is much more, I mean, he was subtle about it, but basically suggested that these women are better in bed. Like, he didn't actually say it like that, obviously, but that was the implication, that they are more passionate in the bedroom department. And while Venus in Revati, which is exalted, Venus in Pisces, which is exalted, does not really translate into, let's say, a lot of pleasure, which is, he seemed to suggest, and, you know, it's understandable that he suggested this, seems a little bit counterintuitive, because when people read into the signification of Venus, especially Venus in a man's chart, it shows the wife, and Venus exalted, meaning the best possible placement that Venus could be in. You would think that, well, this is going to be the dream wife, right? So, and the dream wife for a lot of men also implies a woman that is very sexual and, you know, is going to give them a lot of gratification and a lot of pleasure in this department. And basically he was saying that that's not what exalted Venus says, but instead that actually a damaged Venus would more likely suggest a woman who is more passionate or something like that. And that really kind of got me thinking, because, and I'm pretty sure he did not think about it this way, but Venus, first of all, I have mentioned this in several videos, Venus shows many things in a person's chart, but specifically in a woman's chart, Venus has to do with your sense of self-esteem. I mean, this is true for everyone, okay? Venus is what you value. And it also has to do with your sense of self-esteem. And also the second house in your natal chart, I think even more than Venus, has to do with your self-esteem, because it's the second from the first house, which is yourself. And the second house is about what you value, okay? Now, obviously, when it comes to looking for things like confidence, self-esteem, self-love, and also self-love, that's another one that has to do with Venus. You also want to look, of course, at the general picture. I always mention this as a disclaimer. You have to look at what is happening in the entire horoscope. But these are particular influences that I'm talking about, okay? So you have like a point in this direction if you have the placements that I'm going to be describing. But of course, you have to look at the big picture. You have to look at everything that is happening. The sun, the moon, you know, what debilitated planets, what exalted planets do you also have in your horoscope. Also, to some extent, look at the divisional charts, especially the Navamsha. But I digress. Okay, so what I was going to say is that actually, and unfortunately, I have noticed this, like if you look at women who have a damaged Venus, oftentimes these women have some kind of insecurity about their attractiveness, about their feminine beauty and allure. Because Venus in anyone's chart, actually both men and women, represents the power to attract, the power to be seductive. It also represents, to some extent, how confident you are about your ability to make your own money, or to attract the things you want, or to get as much material possessions as you want, right? But getting back to the topic of self-esteem in a woman, it really makes sense when you think about it, and it's actually kind of hand in hand with what studies in psychology suggest, that women who have low self-esteem tend to be more promiscuous. And if you do a little bit of research into this, you're going to find that it's true. I remember reading this study that said something like over 90 or 95, something like 90 something percent of women who end up in the PORN industry, because I don't want to say it, were victims of sexual abuse or some kind of abuse, usually sexual abuse. And that already gives you to think. And I think, again, this is an entirely separate subject because it had to do more with psychology. But I have to explain it to kind of, to kind of explain the astrological implications as well. But I think what happens is that when a person is sexually abused, especially from a young age, they learn to, and again, if you do some research, you're going to find that this is the case because I've done some research. The information is out there. It's that the person starts to equate their value and their source of self-esteem with their sexuality and their ability to, quote, perform in the bedroom. And in a woman's chart specifically, that is more to do with Venus than Mars. It's also to some extent to do with Mars and what the Mars situation is. But for a woman, more it's about Venus because women are taught that they are supposed to be the ones who are receptive, who are, beautiful, who basically are like sirens and they have to attract. So it makes sense that a woman with a debilitated Venus, a woman who has self-esteem issues, is going to be trying to overcompensate by, pleasing in the bedroom, even sometimes at the expense of her own pleasure, whereas a woman who has healthy Venus, right, a good Venus, let's say even an exalted Venus, either this woman has really good self-esteem because she was raised in a healthier environment, or more specifically, for instance, when it comes to Venus and Pisces, these women tend to get their self-esteem from a spiritual perspective on love, a relationship to divinity sometimes, being religious, or cultivating love in general. They don't necessarily feel the need to get male validation, let's say. And this is something that really kind of got me thinking because this is an astrologer. And again, I'm not trying to throw shade or something. I'm pretty sure that he didn't think about this. But the fact that he said it, like almost as if kind of like how should I put it? Like a sales pitch, hey men, go for a woman who has a debilitated Venus. Don't go for a Venus and Pisces because those are the ones who are going to be wild in the bedroom, quote unquote. Even though he didn't put it exactly in these words, that was kind of like the underlying idea. And basically not realizing that the reason why those women oftentimes are more wild in the bedroom is because they tend to have these so-called self-esteem issues or self-worth issues. That's another thing. Maybe self-worth is a better word to describe the energy of Venus. But, and not to say that also, of course, in some particular signs, it could also just be that a woman has a strong desire, towards physical expression, or maybe has, is more experimental, especially Venus is in Scorpio or Venus is in Gemini. But it would not necessarily explain, a desire to be like hypersexual or promiscuous. Generally when it comes to these kinds of behaviors, it's probably coming from something like trying to prove themselves or like trying to not so much actually like not so much because they're addicted to the physical act, but rather because they're addicted to the validation that they get, the attractiveness that they get, the feeling of being attractive. That's what I'm trying to say. And I know it sounds kind of like maybe even a potentially controversial take on this, but I really can back this up in a lot of ways based on what I have noticed so far, even from women who I knew personally who would tell me that they engaged in things like the hookup culture and whatever. It's like on the surface, actually this girl that I knew in college I can think about, who on the surface, you know, she would say things like, well, I like to experiment because I'm young and I don't want to, you know, reach an old age and have regrets about my life, you know, FOMO and YOLO. For those of you who don't know, FOMO is fear of missing out, and YOLO is you only live once. Basically, the general mentalities of the Gen Y and Gen X, and, well, not Gen X so much, Gen Z. Gen X as well, actually. I'm gonna throw everyone in the mix. Basically, it's the way that the media brainwashes everyone to think that you're supposed to be experimental. But this woman that I can think about, you know, after a couple of drinks, when it was just me and her on a Friday night, she would oftentimes actually say to me point blank that sometimes she wasn't even enjoying herself when she had like a one-night stand, and instead what she got out of it was this feeling of like, oh, I must be good, you know, or like I must be attractive if a guy wants to sleep with me or something like that, which I think is very sad. And, you know, the topic in itself, like I said, is a separate thing that I could probably talk about for hours, about why women are being pushed to be sexual, sometimes against their own nature and against what is comfortable for them. But this is something that I can think about, and also that I came across these like documentaries that were talking about sex addiction, which to me, being a person who I have to say is pretty much asexual, is very interesting to me to hear that there are women who are sex addicts. And I remember like I came across this documentary that was talking about sex addiction, and there were a couple of women, to my surprise. And and I had to watch it because I was really curious, right? For me, it just seems like a totally foreign concept. Like, why would a woman become a sex addict? And it became pretty clear, actually, both of those women were victims of childhood sexual abuse. And one of them literally said that it was like she was used to getting, that was the only way that she felt loved. And it's a really messed up thing, I think, especially if sexual abuse happens in childhood. I don't even know exactly, I'm not an expert, but I can only imagine it's that, you know, it messes up your mind and the way that you see things, you know, to the point where you feel like, well, I'm not lovable if I don't manage to drag a bunch of strangers in my bed or something like that. So it's basically the bottom line being that it's more to do with a self-esteem issue than it is some kind of an addiction to the actual act or the physical hedonistic side of it, you know? And, yeah, but now obviously you might think, okay, so let's say that I have a debilitated Venus. How do I solve that? Now, obviously I'm not trying to say, this is going back to the disclaimer that I mentioned towards the beginning. It doesn't mean that any woman who has a debilitated Venus or has a, how should I put it? A damaged Venus, you know, aspected by malefics, to some extent that can also be the case. It doesn't mean that any of these women are going to be promiscuous. Of course, it depends on everything that is happening in that particular chart, and it also depends a lot on what is happening in the Navamsha. But the bottom line is that if you do have a debilitated Venus or a damaged Venus, and you feel like you have these tendencies, it's pretty important for you to become conscious of what the underlying motivation is. Like, is it truly because, again, I don't want to sound like I'm invalidating some people's experiences. Maybe for some women, really, it is just about the physical aspect of it. But I'm pretty sure, as far as I have noticed, for the vast majority of women, it's not about the physical aspect. It's usually about something else that they are getting from these, like, one-night stands or whatever adventures, sexual adventures or romantic adventures that they're having. And basically, it's important to understand, to be honest with yourself, if you're a woman, about what it is that you want out of this. And is it actually improving your life, or is it not improving your life? That's something that I wanted to say. And I don't know, I could be off. And again, I would have to do more research on this because I haven't done like I haven't particularly looked for patterns with respect to the second house, but I would say that also the second house, especially in the D1 chart, also would link to self-esteem. So like if you have, let's say, malefics in the second house, maybe to some extent, it can also affect your self-esteem and make a person maybe become promiscuous or even a sex addict, quote unquote, because they want to get validation and they want to feel loved. I actually know a guy who fits that description. Kind of, someone who has a malefic in the second house, and I know that he was promiscuous, and could be, so either malefics in the second house or the lord of the second house being debilitated, afflicted, meaning conjunct to malefics and stuff like that. And also, of course, last but not least, malefics aspecting the second house can also give a person low self-esteem, low self-worth. But also, I would think that in order to see a tendency that this person is going to seek to get that self-worth and self-esteem from romantic relationships, you also want to see some kind of a tangency to connections to the houses or the planets connected to sexuality and romance. So connected to Venus, to the 8th house, the 7th house, 5th house, 12th house as well. That's the house of bed pleasures, quote unquote. So, but yes, this is something that I noticed, and this is, again, kind of like an observation, but at the same time, it's kind of like an open topic where I am very curious to hear about whether you have noticed this to be true, or whether you know examples that fit this description, or if you just think that I'm totally off. Of course, you can, of course, share your opinion as long as you are respectful towards me and other people in the comment section. So yeah, this is pretty much what I wanted to say. This is a short observation, and thank you for listening. And also, once again, if you liked it, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, astrology, or tarot, you can check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you.